Hey guys, welcome to another Six Sages Gaming video. Today we have for you the legendary Opus II cards as a spoiler form. Normally we do them as a set review and the full English spoiler list isn't out yet, so we'll do that once we have that information. First and foremost, I want to thank the Final Fantasy TCG France group for putting all these cards up in a list and having them out there. And then to Gustav of Mako Reactor. You guys know he's from Sweden, very well known at this point. He put an Excel file together of all the translations and did an absolutely wonderful job. So we are going to just go through the legendaries, talk about them, and then we're going to have a top three at the end. So first we're going to start off with Granola. As you guys know, there is a big focus on Final Fantasy VIII in this next set. As we've been seeing the ice decks so far, we've noticed that Squall and Laguna are very playable, and we're going to expect to continue to see them see play. So Granola is a 3-drop 7k okay stats, but then you realize for every Final Fantasy VIII forward you control besides her, she gains plus 1000 power. She very quickly becomes an undercosted 8 power or even 9k power forward, which is an absolutely amazing spot to be in. So automatically this card, it just screams being played as a 3 of, also because it has a special, so drawing extra copies isn't dead in your hand. Her second effect, when she's put in the breakstone, doll all forwards your opponent controls. Very, very strong. You know, Ice really does want to focus on being able to doll out their characters. It can help you set up a Terra play where you deal 8,000 damage to two cards. You can set up Jill to freeze 2 of them. There's a lot of synergy that this card is going to be offering. What I really do like, though, is her special, Shooting Star, choose a forward and a backup, dull and freeze them both. For the freeze effect on a backup, that's what I really want to focus on. So you can freeze things like Red Mage, so your opponent can't make their cards unblockable. You can freeze a Kefka, so you don't have to worry about that, 4 or 5k drop someone become a 9 or 10k and killing off one of your guys. It does offer up a lot of utility, so I 100% expect this card to see a lot of play in the different ice decks, and it's certainly a very powerful card going forward, depending on how much it sees play in terms of people playing ice decks or not. That is something left to be seen. Then we're going to talk about Vayne. Now this is a card that if we had sideboards, absolutely would be a sideboard card. That said, as you guys see, we're going to be talking about some more spoilers here. A lot of them are 5 and 6 drops, and when he comes into the field, he dulls all 5 drops and higher your opponent controls, and then they don't activate. So as you guys will see here in a couple of cards, Tifa and Cecil namely are going to be 2 5 drops that we expect to see a ton of play coming up with Opus II. So this can be a very, very strong card to counter that those specific cards. However, you'll notice that he's a 4-drop AK, so okay stats, and he has a special to freeze all forwards your opponent controls. Now that can be very strong. Now this is a card, as I mentioned, I think it would be a sideboard card. Because it has such a strong effect, I think we can see this as a 1, maybe 2 of in most ice decks. But you can't just jam 3 of these because oftentimes it's just going to be dead in a lot of board states. And being a 4-drop AK that's not doing much else for you is going to put you behind and make you lose some tempo. Now, if you get very, very lucky and you slam them down and then play God's Dawn after they just all swung out, a lot of crystal points to do that, but that can help you build up a couple turns. So there is that side of it. It just depends on how the Swarm decks or All-In decks end up coming out, and then we could just say we can just build an Ice, Earth, Shantoto deck and come back that way. So a lot of utility. I'd like to see where this card goes, but ultimately I think it's on the lower end of the playability for Legends. Tifa. Oh man, as you guys know, I am not a Red Mage player. That's the other Matt, and I'll leave it to him. But this card's nuts, folks. Like, it is absolutely nuts. Fire decks have been, besides the Fire and Ice deck and the Fire and Earth, which is mostly just a big beefy deck, Red has kind of been a little bit lackluster and a little bit missing a few pieces, and this Tifa is absolutely the missing piece. Whenever she attacks, choose 1 forward, it cannot block. Now keep in mind, Fire also has Red Mage, which just says choose a forward, it cannot block. So between the 2 of those, and for a very minimal cost, you can choose 2 of their forwards to not block. Then consider that Tifa's a 9k, so you just say, hey, your 9k can't block. You have to block with an AK, so take a point of damage or lose that forward, granted unless they have some kind of battle trick. That's an insane spot to be in. And then what I really, really love about this card, because our friend Cody, another member of Six Sages Gaming, and one of the cards, the decks that we've built very, very early on that I loved was Fire Wind Unblockable. The issue is the cards don't line up as you would hope for in the metal right now, but Dolphin's Blow just absolutely clears the way for Zidane and Yuffie, so you can just get through the points of damage that way. Now if they hit an EX Burst, sure, that's fine, but This lets you build up a board state and say, great, I'm now going to swing through for 3 points of damage that you can do literally nothing about. So if you don't hit an EX burst, you lose. So I 100% expect Tifa to be just a 3 of and absolutely going to be putting fire decks on the map again. And again, this is a card that you can play 3 of and not feel bad about it. Then we have Emperor's Ide, a card I'm not as in love with, especially with just how much Tifa kind of shines over it. But it's a 5-drop 9k, fine spot to be in. The limiting factor here is that all the crystal points must be paid with fire. Yes, you can play this in a dual element deck. You will be able to eventually get to 5, and he doesn't have a special, so you're not running more than 2 per se anyways, but it can lead to some very tough turns where it's just stuck in your hand. His first effect, when he attacks, you get to deal 5,000 damage to something. It's okay. Depending on how the meta shapes up or what deck you're going against, they're not going to have a lot of things that die at 5,000. Usually 6 is kind of that nice cutoff point. Of course, it can stop the early aggressive decks, but if you're playing a 5-drop to do that, you might be falling a little bit behind regardless. What I do really like is the last ability. When it goes in the break zone, you get to deal 9,000 damage or something. Now keep in mind that it's a 9k itself. So you attack, they block the 9k. If they just have to block it because they're, you're almost at lethal, you can then kill off something else of theirs. And 9k again is going to be killing 99% of things in this game. So this is a card that very heavily wants to punish your opponent and saying, look, you can block and it's going to be very bad for you, or you just take the point of damage. So this is another card I can see some sort of play if we see a really, I think it goes very well into the Fire Earth more mid-range decks and kind of that grind out game and have these big beefy bodies. But in Fire Ice, you just want to pass on this card. So definitely going to see play. How much that is to be debated. Now here's a card that I absolutely love. As you guys know, I'm mostly a wind-water player. So Van, when he was spoiled, I lost my mind. Oh, I realized I forgot Jill on this slide, which was a very relevant one. So when he attacks, you get to choose a 4 and bounce a 2-drop back to your hand if you do make it active. And we saw the other card that was spoiled, Riku, which is also an EX burst, so huge shout out to that. And it also turns on the YRP combo, Yoona, Riku, Pain combo easier. I'd still want to run the Mug version, obviously, instead, but it is what it is. You can swing out, bounce Riku back to your hand, play Riku during your second main phase, and then just activate all your cards. And if you're playing, a party attack deck with some knights and you just need to have some chump blockers in the back end, or if you're playing even just Van, if you're playing Maria, he's a 9k blocker on his own. If you're playing Minwoo, suddenly you can just have all these guys stay on the field and become active again. So I am absolutely looking forward to this card. White Whirl, the thing to note here is it says win character. So again, just as Bards from Opus 1, this does count your backups and forward win characters. Characters means anything that's not summon. And we can then see things like milling extra cards per turn, getting extra activations of different backups. I absolutely love what this card can potentially do. Now, the thing to keep in mind is, at the time of recording, I have not looked at all the spoilers yet, so there are probably some other 2-drop backups I missed. I do apologize. I just want to get this video out there relatively quickly, try to generate some hype for Opus 2. But this is a card, very much like Gold Blast. Anytime you see a card that says, have this quantified ability, so backups of 2 or less, this is now a card that people have to keep in mind from Opus 2 to, let's say, Opus 20. Like, there's always going to be some kind of backup that you can get extra utility out of, and Van is going to be one of those cards that every set you have to think about, okay, what new 2-drops do we get? How good is this? Does it replace other 2-drop backups in our deck? And I'm absolutely looking forward to this. And again, just Thief for milling extra cards. I'm all about this. So Van is a card that I'm absolutely in love with. Speaking of a card that goes very, very well with him is Balthier. When a backup enters the field, you activate him. So again, you're bouncing it back up, you're playing it back up, you're going to activate this anyway, so it has pseudo-brave, if you will. Dull, choose 1 forward, deal at 2,000 damage. So this helps you trade up some characters. Now again, Minwoo is a very big issue for this deck. There's another forward, I forget the name of it, but it's Minwoo on a body. So these ping effects necessarily aren't as strong as you might have hoped. The other thing I do like is Fires of War, so you can play, it's a very good specialty, so you can play 3 of them and not have to worry about it. He can't be targeted by your opponent's summons or abilities, so he's an Aerith effect just for himself, so he's very hard to remove. Then he gains first strike till end of turn. So again, we said we're playing Maria, so you can always threaten a 9k first striker, which absolutely is a great spot to be in. So I am very much looking forward to seeing how much This card can see plays. Of course, living the dream, if you will, would be to say Ishtola, Balthier, the starter Veil 4. There's a lot of these other cards that can do like ping-based damage effects. I would love to see that make an appearance in some form. I think it's probably not playable in the meta per se, but it would be an absolutely fun deck to play. Now, here's a card that got a lot of people excited. First off, this artwork is just so good. Dirge Cerebus had some great artwork for it, so I'm very happy to see this. Vincent, it's also available in sleeves, so I'm definitely going to try to get those sleeves. Right off the bat, cannot be broken by your opponent's summons or abilities. So very nice spot to be in because, you know, Light Cloud is getting a lot of play, Odin's, so it's not going to die to EX bursts, again, be it if it's 7-drop Odin in that case. But what's really interesting is Death Penalty. Now, this is an effect that it costs a lot, so you want to be playing this in a very grindy deck to be able to pay 5 crystal points and discard a Vincent. But being able to choose any number of forwards of combined cost 7 and break them, that's absurd. So this is a very, I believe, reasonably costed card that, you know, if you're only killing 2 things, it might be hard to justify it, but it's really great at being able to kill 2, 3, and if I guess they have a Kate Sith, you could technically kill 4. I'm interested to see what other 1-drops are in Opus 2. I would have really liked to see this at being an 8 cost or less. I understand why it's not, but I think overall it's a pretty playable card. I don't have a lot of experience with Earth-based decks, but I know a lot of people have been wanting to see a playable Vincent card, and absolutely this is a push in the right direction, and a card I very much expect to see play even with the very high special cost. So we'll see how that ends up shaping out the meta. A very interesting card that they've kind of beefed up was Gabranth. Costs 1 less for each point you've received, so it's very reasonable that this is going to be a 3-drop 9k because you can get to 4 damage very easily. And outside of that, it's just a vanilla character, which how much do you value a very undercosted 9k is ultimately the question. Again, if you're playing a Minwu based deck where you can just have, okay, I'm playing this 9k body for virtually nothing, it's going to sit on the field, block all your guys, sure. And we saw this effect with Dark Knight where you want to be getting to 4, 5, 6 points of damage. And if you have 6 points of damage or more, all your forwards gain Brave. Now that effect is absolutely absurd. And if we were to revisit the Ultima Sia deck that Joe won with in London, I absolutely think you could have this kind of effect being played into it, because giving all your guys Brave and also having a 9k and 7, 8k, which Cloud and Guy are locked at, can absolutely help push some numbers in your favor. And you have Ultima Sia, of course, as the other 9k. So this is one of those cards that it might just seem like a vanilla 9k off the bat, but it does have a bit of utility to it. The other thing to note here is that it's 6 points of damage or more. Maybe something in the future will be able to increase your damage to 8. I do believe there was a card in Japan that says you have to deal 8 points of damage to lose the game. So then this is a card that could, in theory, see more play, because then you have to take 2 points of damage instead of 1 to lose the game. But overall, it's certainly lower on my list for playable legendaries. I think it has a home. I think it's going to be a very niche home, but it's something to keep an eye on regardless. A card I was super excited for at the start, and then, because this is one of the first legends that were spoiled, an EX Burst on a legend, I think it's just super flavorful for what it does. Choose a forward with cost, it says inferior, but less or equal number of lightning backups you control and break it. So this is a deck that wants to be very focused on, I'm going to be playing all these value light backups. So if we look at Seymour and we look at Lulu, we're going to be playing this mono lightning almost control deck. And you can play other cards like Sage for more utility, recycle cards, and have a backup that way. So this is a card that becomes, yes, it's great on EX Burst. You can kill something for free, hopefully. Death, which cost a special and 4 lightning crystals. Choose any forward and break it. That's also nice. But again, keeping in mind, or I should note, you don't have to dull to do it. So you can do it multiple times in a turn if you have all this crystal points to use and double eat it to discard. But it's certainly lacking, and both lightning spoilers truthfully just didn't do it for me. It feels like, and maybe again this could be the case if I haven't looked at all the Opus 2 spoilers, there could be insane lightning backups. I will make that note here, but it's a card that says we need to see Opus 3, we need to see Opus 4, we need to go down the line to a point where we have this very deep card pool for lightning, so then we can see we have to play the 18 best lightning backups for this deck to work. You have to have every lightning backup do something very impactful when it comes into play like Seymour, or have a very strong removal effect like Lulu, or this legend's just not going to do as much as you might hope. So another card that unfortunately I believe lower tier of playability, but it does have the room to grow as sets move on. The card I did like a little bit more was Amon, and strictly because the first thing I thought about was my Fire Lightning, the Crash and Burn deck that we did that won some events out of Europe, I believe it was. People messaged us about. When it enters the field, you get to choose opponent's forward and dull it. So it's basically like the 4-drop Lightning without the haste. But of course, if you have Red Mage, so you could very well just make this a 4-drop Lightning with haste. That's also an 8k, which is a very nice spot to be in. But then dull to choose a forward and dull it. Now, this is a card that... so for example, Prish can be very hard to deal with. There's going to be other cards or other forwards that are just going to be able to wall off your plays and make it very difficult for you to swing through those last points of damage. Yes, I realize that you have to dull this card and sacrifice the point of damage per se that he would be doing, but if you're dulling him to negate their Prish or one of their other high value forwards, then all about this card. It just screams, you know, it wants to be played in this kind of tempo deck. Then the other side of this is you can play an Ice Lightning deck, which you guys know is another favorite of mine. It helps you set up those critical Jill turns easy by being able to say, you know, dull one with Snow, then dull another guy so they can't block Snow with this one, Jill, freeze them both. So there's a bit of utility that this adds, and it's just a great 8k, you know, 4-drop 8k, so it has the fine stats for it. But I think there's going to be a lot more cards that interact with this that can really push it in the right direction. Now again, it doesn't have a special, so not having a card or having multiple in your hand can be a little bit bricked and make it feel a bit difficult to choose when to discard and when you're going to draw your other one. But ultimately, I think the effect is strong enough that it's going to be seeing a place in some decks in the future. Yoona is a card that I was certainly not at all excited about when it was spoiled. It's a card that's a 3-drop 7k. When it attacks, you get to blank all the abilities of your opponent's forwards, non-light, non-dark. And then she has a special, choose one job and element. She gains the name, job, and elemental on a turn. So you can turn her into a standard unit. You can do cheeky things with that. But ultimately a little lackluster. And then her, you know, 1,000-year-old ago partner, however you say it, spirit ancestor, whatever, what have you, Len, she, you know, as they play, they have the same, the dress sphere, I believe it was called. She's wearing the same outfit and all, you know, that whole story in Final Fantasy X, 10-2 specifically, pardon me. When she forms in a party with Yoona attack, you get to search your deck for a summon card and play it for free. So that's absurd. Just imagine that you get to play a Bahamut for free out of your deck. Now it's a 5 cost or more. You have to break Len. Sure, that's fine, but you can play a 4-drop Odin for free and kill whatever forward you were worrying about being blocked. Yes, I realize that these two combined, party attacking can be a little difficult, and it does take several turns to set up. But there's a number of things that you can be playing that absolutely make this a force to be reckoned with. So I think Yoona, in her own right, sure, she's going to be seeing some play because the blank effect can be strong. But the best thing that you're going to be doing with these pair, or this pair rather, is going to be party attacking with them, playing a summon for free from your deck. And what I like is that it allows you to play a more toolbox effect where you say, I'm going to run one Bahamut in my deck even though I'm playing, let's say, a Water Wind deck, for example. You get to then, hopefully you don't draw it early. If you do, obviously that's the case to run 2 of them, but in theory it would allow you to play all these 1 to 2 of summons that you can just tutor up when you need them and to use them. So things like Golem become stronger, things like Titan, so you can save it from being broken. There's a lot of different things that are summons that gain value out of being able to play them for free and playing them out of your deck. So again, with the same respect as Van in terms of a card that is fine now and we have to see how it goes forward, I think this is a pair that we really have to keep an eye on because being able to play any summon for free, if we consider Bahamut, is absurd. Just absurd. So I definitely think that this combo is going to see play. I might be a little bit biased because I'm a water player myself, but I am absolutely looking forward to playing these two. Now the card I'm really excited about because water definitely needed something. It needed a 9k besides Ultimacia, and it needed Just another big beefy guy, because a lot of, the tricks with water is that it's undercosted, but you get to draw a card or has some other effect. But Cecil is an absolute powerhouse. So Cecil does not take damage from summoner abilities. He has to block, which is kind of the bad thing, but he buffs all your other forwards by 1,000. So again, this plus Maria, all your forwards are getting plus 2,000. So the pair we just talked about are now 9Ks on attacking with Minu. Absurd. But then your forwards don't take damage from summons or abilities. So unless they have like a break effect, there's not a lot that they can be doing. It turns off Brynhildr, it turns off Bahamut. This card is just absurd, and again, very much what Water needed out of this next set, and it's absolutely going to see play. Again, the one downside being it doesn't have a special, so you might be reluctant to run 3, but I would say for how good this card is, and just hoping that you don't draw multiple early, I could absolutely see running 3 of this card, because it's just absurd for how many different things that it shuts off. So I look very much forward to getting my hands on Cecil as soon as possible. Now we're going to be getting into our light cards. I forgot to update the image here because it's the card based out of the Japanese version, but it's a 4-drop 8K. I couldn't find the proper one. But if a job warrior forward you control receives damage, reduce it by 2,000. Fine enough in itself. The special wasn't translated, but for 1 CP and dull, choose a forward and deal it 8,000 damage. Yes, please. Well, let me rephrase it. It's damage equal to its power. So if you play something like Golem, you can buff it to 10k. And this card is just amazing. Now, we have the 2-drop Warrior Light, which is already going to see play. But what's interesting here is it does make a case in the Fire Earth decks specifically that we could now see running Light Cloud and Light Warrior Light reasonably side by side. And, we would then have to play Cosmos, and maybe that's just the point that we have to take there with being able to get the extra rule with light summons. But I think that having these two side by side can be very, very strong. Now, it's certainly not anywhere near Light Cloud's level because it's missing Brave, but if you were able to give this card Brave reliably, I would love to see that in a deck that it goes with. And then the other Warrior of Light is the water version, which you're probably not playing those two in the same deck because your Water Warrior of Light wants to be focused on standard units, so that can be a little bit rough, but it's definitely a card that I think is going to be seeing quite a bit of play. And then lastly, a more controversial card is the new Emperor, which just blanks all effects of your opponent's forwards, which is autos, abilities, and specials. Now this one does say characters, so I'm assuming it means forwards and backups. There was a little bit of debate between different groups if it was all cards or just forwards. Turning off backups, of course, is going to be good too because you can turn off Kefka. So I put that cost and effect there in brackets because this card shuts off anything that's written that way. So if it's a cost is 2 fire, do X, that's what it's going to turn off. Now, it's a card that I'm not totally in love with, and if we were in a sideboard kind of game, absolutely put it in the sideboard. 100%, without a question. It's dark, so everyone can play it. Put it in your sideboard. However, there are too many decks that don't rely on those special effects completely, where the Fire Ice deck and the Fire Lightning deck are all more or less based on enter the ability effects or enter the field abilities, and those don't get shut off by Emperor. So you could very easily get stuck with a vanilla 8K that's not doing anything. Now, the other side of this is if you think about the Ice decks that are very heavy dependent on their specials and also have a hard time dealing with removing cards because they don't have a lot of damage effects, then Emperor is absolutely insane because ideally the way to kill him would be Terra, and then they can't use Terra's special charge to make it deal 8,000, so he's in a pretty good spot. So it's certainly going to be a meta call, and I think it's an okay card depending on what the meta shapes up. Now, the interesting thing to note here is if you're playing the 5-drop Emperor, and if you're playing very specifically either the water version with Huge so you can cycle them away or the earth version with Deleta to break them, then I would be totally okay with running this as a 3-1 split per se, just so you can tutor it up. Now again, those are probably the only 2 decks I would try to make this work in, unless, again, very, very clear, unless the meta is very heavy in specials and activated abilities, and of course this just becomes a card that a lot of people are playing. But again, I think that the risk is too high given the current meta for this card to absolutely see a lot of play early out. But I think the Earth, Water, Emperor themed decks can absolutely play this as a one-of, and they can get the most value out of it because they can tutor up the 8-drop or the 4-drop AK. So naturally, what are kind of my 3 picks out of the gate with what I think would be the most impactful? Again, I haven't seen all the spoilers for Opus 2. I'll say that one last time. But I think these 3 have very clear decks that they're going to go in. So again, Tifa, being able to make something not be able to block when it attacks, absolutely a strong effect. Cecil, buffing your whole team, making them not be able to take damage by summons. It just completely shuts off the Fire Ice deck, and again, if you're playing Minwu, even better. They can't Bahamut you out of the game anymore. And then Van, I personally just love this card because as we go forward, there's going to be more decks that have these key 2-drop backups that you can play over and over and over and over again, and you're giving your entire team pseudo Brave, again assuming Van lives. And you can just keep doing this interaction, and then his special is also very, very good. So I think these 3 cards are absolutely going to see play, and I'm actually very much looking forward to brewing a Wind Ice Mill deck again, strictly because we have Van, and this is finally the card that we've been needing. So we can reuse Jill, we can reuse Thieves, we can reuse a lot of these cards that were previously lacking. So I am very, very excited for Opus 2. So that's all we have for this video, guys. Again, we will be doing our proper set reviews in the near future. Let us know in the comments down below what your favorite cards out of Opus 2 are and what are your favorite legendaries. Again, these are kind of our top 3 picks without looking at any more. We would love to hear what you guys think. So thank you very much for watching, guys. We'll do more Opus reviews in the future, and we'll catch you on the next 6 Sages Gaming video. Have a good one.